jumping right back into the show, talking about Justin Jefferson, obviously was rewarded this offseason with becoming the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history, but also just the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And usually how it is for all the other NFL players, unless you're in that 1% of the generational alien type of players in the NFL. Usually, when you have a season like Justin Jefferson did in 2023, it usually doesn't bode well for you in a contract year because he missed 7 games in 2023. He only played 10 games essentially, and usually when that happens, it doesn't mean you're going to get the high extension that you've been wanting to get over the course of these last two off seasons. But luckily for Justin Jefferson, he's not human. He still got 1,000 yards in 10 games, which is insane. And I think he's shown enough, safe to say, that he should be paid up to that value in terms of contracts. So he got his money, but now how do we fix that issue? How do we fix that hamstring injury that was bothering Justin Jefferson all throughout last year? And really, they were in the spot to still make the playoffs, but I believe that this injury to Justin Jefferson, and also another factor that I will get to throughout this segment, is what really needs to change and what really needs to happen for the Vikings to continue to progress. But talking on Justin Jefferson, on what he had to say about this hamstring injury, he said, "I'm so scared for it to happen again. I've been overly cautious about it," and he said that he's been really focusing on treating this hamstring, not just on the field, but off of the field as well, implementing new techniques to just keep it as strong as possible and make himself injury proof, like he said, going forward. And it's a different scenario because Justin Jefferson, I'm almost positive he said that this is his first type of injury that has kept him out for this amount of time. He's usually never hurt throughout his time in college, and especially in the NFL. He's always pretty much been present there for the team he plays with. And now for something like this to happen to you, I'm sure it's a major shock, a major bucket of ice water to just sort of humble you in a bit, to make you realize that this is a possibility. Especially also now that you got this massive contract, you want to go out there and prove that you deserve it. And now Justin Jefferson and how the Vikings are trying to help him through it. They're implementing a lot more rest days. It's sort of a schedule of on and off, alternating days up until this point, making sure that he goes 100% in the days that he is practicing, but a lot more off days being implemented so far already for Justin Jefferson, which is crazy to think about because he's only about like 25 years old, and now to almost have, not to have a complete veteran schedule. You know how veterans have a lot more off days as they become older into the late 20s, mid 30s or anything like that, but he is still only 25 years old. So I thought it was a little just weird and off-putting that already he's on this sort of schedule, and he felt weird about it as well. He brought it up in the interview that he doesn't like to think of it as a veteran schedule, or just basically doing whatever he can to the best of his ability to just be healthy. And if it requires this, that's just the matter of fact. It is something that he is just going to have to do. But on top of it, the Vikings are doing their part. They're monitoring the amount of yards he's running day in and day out of practice, how hard he's running those yards, how the amount of yards he's running, how fast he's running them as well, and also the amount of weight he loses after practice. All of that combined into figuring out this game plan that they have for Justin to keep him as healthy as possible. And almost with this being the case, it almost ensures me that we're not going to probably see Justin Jefferson in the preseason. If I were to guess, maybe for a drive or something like that at most, because I do fear that stepping back into the NFL cold like that doesn't really do you any favors. But I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they held him out of preseason. And he's just basically focused on making this as strong as possible because it's still in the back of his mind a little bit, and he wants to get back to playing freely, as he did throughout basically his entire career, not worrying about injuries because it's never really happened to him. So it all really is more of a mental thing, especially with a hamstring injury, because, not speaking from experience because I've never had a hamstring injury or anything like that, but I can only imagine, these tissue injuries on the severity of them. uh, it could really happen at any given point, and how fast-paced, how intense everything is in an NFL game, and how you get hit and everything like that. I'm sure it affects everything. So he's still playing a little cautious, a little bit with a scared mentality, I would go as far as saying, but it looks like he's pretty much close to as healthy as possible leading up until training camp. Up until this point, he's looking good out there. There have been some clips you see of the connection with Sam Darnold, and the only real worry you have about this new regiment for Justin Fields is that, he's not out there as much, and how will that affect maybe any chemistry issues or anything like that with essentially two new quarterbacks. But, on that topic, Justin's Justin. He's Justin Jefferson. I don't think it really matters too much, but that's the only thing I could really think about as to how this could be not a complete positive thing for Justin Jefferson. And that's obviously a major part to the Vikings, right? Having him out there because of how talented he is, highly regarded among his peers, considered one of the best, if not the best, receiver in the NFL. But to me, talking about the Vikings and where they are as a team now, getting his contract extension out of the way now focusing on going forward and getting better as a football team and what needs to happen, what factor needs to be in place for them to do that. For me, I think having Justin Jefferson just out there and healthy, producing, is the bare minimum that this team is going to need to be the team that they want to be in 2024. To me, the main factor going into this year is the defensive side of the ball, but specifically timely defense and clutch defense, if that makes sense, right? Because I think at certain spots last year, in those critical moments where your defense is out there, where you need a stop, and I think I saw it in the receiver series on Netflix where, the Vikings defense is out there and they need a stop from their defense, obviously, to preserve a win or have a chance to win in the game against the Detroit Lions late in the year. And they came up short. Obviously, the Lions ended up winning that game. And it's those sort of moments that, one or two isn't the end of the world, but a lot, when it becomes a consistent theme and a bad habit, that is where it really separates the best teams, the good teams, from the playoff teams, from the great teams that are actual contenders in the playoffs and going forward. And like I said, once it becomes a habit, a consistent thing that happens, that's something that you need to worry about, because last year the Vikings lost 8 of the 10 games that they lost by 7 points or less, and of those 8 games that they lost by 7 points or less, half of them, 4 of them, they lost by 4 points or less. So you could say, obviously, you could say more offense, but I don't know how much more they'd really need offensive-wise. That's still always something that teams want to improve upon, the offensive side of the ball, but I don't think they need to improve that much when you have Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones back there as your running back, a decent offensive line as well. I don't know how much better you can get on that side of the ball. So really, it just comes down to the defense at certain points of the games, giving up these late leads and then ended up losing by 3 points, 4 points, 5 points, 7 points a lot of the times. Those are big moments. Those are big scenarios where it could swing the momentum of your team. If, say, you lose 2 games in a row like that, it's a real momentum killer and just a morale killer in that locker room, because once it happens, having it happen 8 times to 5 times is crazy. If you're the head coach and that happens multiple times like that, what can you say in that locker room after the 4th or 5th time that it happens? You can imagine it's frustrating as a coach, not only seeing it, but as an offense as well. If you're putting up 20 to 25 points each game on average, and you're still seeing your defense give up late leads like that, you feel so helpless on the sideline, and you're almost not wasting it, but having a player like Justin Jefferson having crazy games and still coming up short, that's the last thing you want to happen in those scenarios. And to the Vikings' credit, they did improve this year on defense. They added Blake Cashman as a linebacker. They drafted Dallas Turner. They signed Jonathan Grenard as a pass rusher. So I think from the second level down to the first level on defensive line, I think they're pretty solid. But still on the back end in the secondary is still their weakest point, in my opinion. And that really can't be the case in this day and age, just in the NFL, with how heavy it is based on the offensive side of the ball, and especially in that division because of the level of quarterbacks that you have. Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams now also. All three of those guys have the talent, it seems, to be top 10 quarterbacks, top 8 quarterbacks, at least from a talent standpoint, and the weapons that all of them have available to them. You can't have the guys that are covering them be your weakest spot. So for me, that is still a touchy subject. If they could survive a lot better than they did last year, then those 2 to 3 wins that they could get by winning those one possession games, I think are going to make the difference, and that's something that we need to see at least a little bit improvement upon in 2024 to give the Vikings the best shot of winning, because I think their offense is good enough to where if this defense holds opposing teams to 20 points or less on average, I think this offense is that good to win games if they're only giving up 20 points per game. That's just how I feel about them. I really like how this offense is going. And last year they were still pretty decent having 3 different quarterbacks be the main guy at various points of the season. So if they have an established guy like Darnold or JJ, whatever the case may be, it's still going to be an improvement. And if we do see that improvement, I like the Vikings' chances at least to be more competitive and have one of those close games swing their way in 2024. But that's what I believe needs to be something else that needs to step up in 2024, apart from just having Justin Jefferson out there. Yes, that's the major thing, but if you don't have that defense, I still think the Vikings are going to plateau around 500 to being an average team in the NFL. But that's just me. Leave your guys' thoughts on how you feel about the Vikings, how confident you are in that defense, how confident you guys are in their quarterback situation. Tell me what you guys think about it. That's how I feel. But now, for the last segment, I just thought I'd recap some of the injuries that have been happening throughout the NFL so far. We've had some major ones over the weekend, so I thought I'd touch up on those and just provide you guys some updates on the length, the severity of some of the major players around the NFL throughout training camp. So when we return, we're going to talk about that just quickly here before we wrap up today's show.